Futurama Comic, Issue 59. Fry gets hit by a boxer from the interactive 3D TV, and that's exactly why it'd never be released. Bender wants it to happen again, and I have to just assume it's because he's tired of all the stupid things Fry says. He gets shown another show where a robot woman says that if her friend's husband is cheating, she's got to delete that dog. It's not the dog's fault. Or is she literally telling him to delete her husband? That's extreme. Instead of her lampshading that, she says pragmatically that she can't because he pays for everything. And then complains that Bender is stealing her jewelry. And that's another reason 3D TV wouldn't be legal. And how did the Bembot even react to what he did anyways? It was a previously recorded episode. Then they see reporters say that the mayor is involved in a scandal that may end his leadership. But I'm guessing that won't happen because the series is terrified of changing the status quo in even one pointless way, even though the mayor is unlikable. He's being charged with corruption and denies it, and is told that WikiLeaks have footage of him accepting bribes. Bender lies to say that he's a better criminal than him, and Fry says the mayor should have Bender as an advisor. And because he heard Bender say he gets into worse trouble than him every day, he somehow decides to hire him because he somehow heard them. How does this even work? There would be more than one person watching a show on a 3D TV at a time. Then after Leela shows up with the groceries and bores Bender complaining about the price of eggs, I wonder why someone as rude as Bender didn't instantly walk away instead of standing there for 20 minutes. Fry was a good enough friend to actually care about what she said. He says that she loves eggs while looking like he feels sorry for her. And Bender's so bored he calls for a taxi and jumps on it and tells the driver to go to City Hall. Leela suspiciously tells Fry she'll see him later because she has more errands to run, and then says nobody'll miss some owl eggs. But sadly, the owl saw her and planned revenge, just as I was about to compliment her on being willing to think outside the box and try something new. It would have been a smart idea if they hadn't seen her from the roof. I guess they won't go attack her right away for no reason at all, and instead somehow they'll take up the entire plot bothering her, when this could be resolved right away. Bender shows up to the office late and apologizes, and the mayor is nice enough to tell him not to worry about it because it's hopeless. He has another press conference in 5 minutes and the media is going to eat him alive. Literally. Bender reassures him and calls himself his uncle, I guess because that's considered cool in the future. He tells him to start talking and leave everything to him. The mayor gets interrogated about his money laundering, and I was caught off guard by one of them asking, "What kind of wine would you go well with?" Then I have to see the mayor catch Tiny Tim and get thanked for it in front of everyone. It was funny that Bender said, "Oh look, the mayor caught a robot child that someone threw off the roof for some reason, and he's able to make wheezing sounds whenever he wants just for effect." Would a robot even wheeze? He doesn't need air. The mayor shakes his hand, and Zoidberg greets Leela, and they hear a noise, and find out that the owls were somehow stupid enough to start flying to Farnsworth's house. And somehow those two owls didn't immediately die from that, or at least get fatally injured. So both of these plots have no excuse for happening. And I'm not interested in seeing the owls get their revenge. I just feel bad for Leela. Farnsworth doesn't care, so he decides to ignore them to avoid making things worse. And I thought these owls were gonna get a whole owl army against her. Instead, they see giant slingshots because there's a special on them and are somehow strong enough to carry one towards Leela. I guess they're super strong alien owls. Then Bender videotapes the mayor while the mayor's dressed like Elmer Fudd doing a reality show in the woods. He says people love seeing politicians shoot stuff, only half the population, but I assume that's the half that voted for him, so he's got a good point. Out of nowhere, somehow someone was shooting the reality show here because she booked this part of the woods months ago. What are the chances of that? He's told to fire the laser, and he's told it doesn't matter what he hits, because he'll fix it in editing. Bender is suddenly dressed in an obviously bad reindeer disguise and calls him a strong leader, which appeals to a farmer who couldn't vote for him anyways. Then it turns out Farnsworth's house is being attacked by giant boomerangs and cherry bombs. and their misfires are damaging the jewelry store. Leela says she has a confession to make, and Farnsworth assumes out of nowhere that she's in love with him, probably because he assumes she'd be attracted to how smart he is. And he's responsible enough to say he can't date employees, and reveals he did it before. Leela says she's gonna return the eggs instead of getting to see what they taste like, and Farnsworth tells her not to, because if they give in to a few angry birds, they'll be showing weakness. Somehow an owl had told them not to litter before. I guess he meant an alien owl. Finally walks away, planning to do something with the science. He could have turned on a force field generator to protect his building a while ago, but of course the owls would still attack Leela the second she left it. He could have surrounded it with lethal electricity to immediately get rid of the owls. Too bad they can't make new eggs and give them to the owls. The mayor thanks the reporter for calling him handsome, and it turns out that Bender paid some of the reporters to ask a question, and outright admits it. And then he says they don't know what this mayor does for the city, but he doesn't explain it either. So he insults the rest of the world and says they're leaving because they don't have to take this. So the title of the story comes in, and Nixon conveniently overhears because he was doing razor shopping nearby, and he conveniently says he'll let the city secede because of that thing that Bender could have very easily not said. That never happened. Bender tells Farnsworth he needs his help shooting the city into space. Why would he need to do that if it was given permission to secede? I guess he thought it'd be cool. Farnsworth says a response that no one would actually say because the writer's strawmanning him. Bender goes to Wernstrom for help, calling him Professor Wernstorm, which really is funnier. Wernstrom says his undergrad project was to build a city dome, which is still in his parents' backyard. How big is that backyard? He must have had really rich parents. Either that or he hit it with a shrink ray. He gets offered a mere $50 and agrees to it just because he's still paying off a student loan. It's realistic that he wouldn't say no to money. But you'd think that if he's such a good inventor, he would have already sold an invention that made him rich by now. So $50 would be nothing and he wouldn't still have a student loan. So the mayor makes a speech to the people about the secession, even though it was Bender who said that. And I have to assume most of the people in the city are in favor of it because he's bothering with that speech, and that's unrealistic. Even the people of Scotland and Quebec aren't mostly in favor of seceding. So this city's got no chance of that. It's not like it has a unique identity to hold on to motivate people to want to secede. The city's not as big as Texas. The people are all okay with this because they trust the mayor just for saving a kid. At least the mayor's got the sense to be unsure about this. Bender tells him to let him do the thinking. So this might just be a subtle way of trying to take over the town. He tells the character who has way too many jobs to fire the under rockets as the city's surrounded with a dome, and it blasts off to space. This exposes old New York to the sun. So one of the mutants hates it and wants sunblock. But the other one doesn't need any because his umbrella head finally paid off. This would give the sewer city some new relevancy now because it's the only city there. Farnsworth gets told what happened and only cares about the fact that the owls are still attacking. Which makes sense because that's what's threatening him at the moment, and it's what he's been working on. He shows her a giant gift with the best killing machine ever created and leaves it outside. Conveniently, it breaks out of the gift on its own instead of the owls either never opening it or only tearing it open by accident. Predictably, his monster's not all it's cracked up to be since he hyped it up. So the owls lured away with the lollipop because they're genius alien owls. We see someone get flung out of a tube into the side of the dome, and in another realistic consequence, a woman calls out Bender because he cut off access to New Jersey, and now she can't visit her grandkids that don't want to see her. The worst part is, all of the TV channels that aren't local programs are cut off. And they say that Morbo's making movie reviews. Bender tries to stay on the bright side when I'd expect him to be horrified that he won't get as much TV. He says he'll just have some beers and turn in early. But he can't, because he drank the last ones and New York doesn't make beer. How did he drink the last ones in the entire city? He could solve this problem by setting up a way for the city to get beer and make it. The only food locally made are hot dogs and pretzels somehow. Even though in modern times they've invented skyscraper farms, which I'd hope would be the standard for all farms, not to mention greenhouses. So every city in the future would have a lot more local food than that. And Bender just says that's all humans need to live, as if he never heard of scurvy before. Why are they talking as if the city has to be self-sufficient and can't ever trade with anywhere else? This doesn't have to be a problem with secession at all. Somehow Fry and other people got scurvy weeks later instead of the city importing fruit a long time ago. And I guess Tiny Tim doesn't have scurvy and is just standing there with them for moral support, because he's a robot. Farnsworth apologizes to Fry and says he gave all of his cellar fruit to the fruit ninjas when he hired them to attack the owls. And I'm finally done giving him the benefit of the doubt and asking why he doesn't send flying robots after the owls. He could send tiny ones that inject poison that fly faster than the owls. And then they'd have no chance and be instantly defeated. Farnsworth says he can't complain even though clearly his whole house is being destroyed, because he doesn't really care about anything. The cops warn the mayor that they can't keep up with the rioting in the streets. People are printing out his approval ratings and eating them for food. He's been drinking the thermometer for fuel and says he should find someone else to blame. And at least explaining that it's the mercury poisoning talking. Wait a minute. If robots can eat metallic robot food, that must be because it's for fuel. It must be giving them energy. But alcohol just provides them with benefits that no robot food can apparently. Wait, he switched to mineral oil in one episode. Why can't he just go back to that? I guess the city ran out of that. Bender's strapped to a rocket and blamed by the mayor in front of people, and Bender says that he didn't mean blame him. He meant the guy in the mailroom who got mad when he tried to drink him from not functioning properly. The mayor lights the rocket, saying he'll banish Bender and beg the Earth to take the city back. Farnsworth agrees to let Leela return those eggs, because he forgot what they were fighting about anyways. But those eggs would have hatched by now. She didn't consider that possibility, but that's because she put them in the fridge. And I guess she didn't cook them in all this time because she was waiting for Farnsworth to agree to stop fighting with the owls and let her return their eggs. You know, they're owls, not crows. Crows can hold grudges against specific people, but are owls that way? Zoidberg ate the owl eggs a while ago because he didn't know they were Leela's, and he wasn't supposed to eat them. You'd think he would have asked why the building he was living in was being attacked by owls right away, and immediately found out about the owl eggs. But to be fair, he wouldn't know owl eggs from regular eggs. He says that if it's eggs she needs, he might be able to help. Nixon welcomes the city back to the Earth a month later, with a 300% tax increase as revenge. And somehow the people of the city cheer anyways. And the Planet Express building was fixed. And Farnsworth says, and people said it was a fool to buy owl insurance. Bender goes over to Leela with one eye and says he got pulled back to Earth and crashed in a spring break party where he drank and partied for a week and then walked back. So how does that explain the one eye, which Leela doesn't even relate to? He would have been damaged a lot more than this from crashing from a fall to space. And normally he's portrayed as practically invulnerable. He wonders what Leela's been up to, and because she says it started with some eggs instead of owl eggs, he says she's still boring. Predictably, she got the owls to stop attacking by giving them eggs that Zoidberg didn't say where he found them from. Somehow she never asked where he got them, and I assumed he'd lay the eggs immediately. So the story ends with the owls being confused at some red birds that all resemble Zoidberg while mostly being birds, somehow. I guess Zoidberg got a hold of a gene splicer of Farnsworth's and made it so that he'd lay bird eggs to fool the owls better. Because Farnsworth can already create a biological being, so he'd have this technology too. And it's amazing how well Zoidberg's catchphrase fits in as a bird cry. I can see where the writer got the idea. This story was about Bender somehow getting hired by the mayor to be his advisor just because he said he breaks the law more than him when watching him get interviewed on 3D TV. When 3D TV would obviously be illegal since Bender can steal from his shows despite the shows not existing in his world. It's not like the TV screen becomes a portal to other dimensions, because Bender interacted with his mayor. Bender somehow decides to secede from the Earth for no reason. And also for no reason, the city is forced to be completely self-sufficient instead of setting up trading with other places. So this forces people to get scurvy and riot against the mayor. This doesn't seem to accurately portray the problems with secession then, so what was the point? And Leela's subplot is about her getting fed up with the high price of eggs and stealing owl eggs. But the owls somehow both spot her instead of being far away gathering food, instead of one of them being with the eggs guarding them, instead of being on the way home from gathering food and holding it. And somehow, instead of the owls immediately flying over to Leela and attacking her, which would just cause her to lose the eggs and avoid the whole plot, or cause it more naturally if she broke the eggs, somehow she made it all the way home unharmed, and the owls started attacking the building she worked at for weeks. And somehow Farnsworth wasn't smart enough to just send flying robots at the owls to kill them instantly. That would be too small for them to deal with. I just felt bad for Leela right away. The owls may have a reason to care about their eggs, but there's tons of owls out there anyways, so why couldn't Leela just have an omelet? Why was even that too good for her? Aren't owls a replacement for rats in the future? Or was the Avatar The Last Airbender instead?